Hi, how you doing? And welcome back to the video on the channel. And we're back for a new season. Video content is starting up again. Hopefully, going to have lots for you over the next few weeks before the start of the Premier League season. So, if you are new to the channel, please do like and subscribe. And we are hoping to try and get to 100 subscribers throughout the course of the season, which would be absolutely awesome. So, if you can help out with that, it would be greatly appreciated. And what we have for you today is our top five, or at least five players, which I think are tremendous value. So they're not necessarily cheap bargains, but they are players who you think, wow, they are really worth that price and then some. So let's get into the video. So we're going to start with Bukayo Saka. Now, my jaw pretty much hit the floor when I saw that he was 8.5 million. And to be honest, he was the same price that he was at the end of last season. And I'm actually somebody that did have him in all throughout the season. He was pretty much the only player that didn't leave my squad, even when at the start of the season Martinelli was scoring more. Stuck with Saka, and he came good towards the end, especially. And I just don't see a situation where Saka isn't in my team at the start of the season, barring injury. Let's take a look at the fixtures. Fantastic fixtures as well, to be honest, at the start of the season, those first 7 game weeks. Yeah, you've got Man United, but it is at home as well. Other than that, I do think they are some of the best fixtures you can probably look at. And just to take a look at the stats from last season as well, among Arsenal players, he scored the second amount of goals. He's only one behind the lead goal scorer. In terms of assists, he was also second by one, only to Trossard, who probably got some at Brighton as well. Trossard didn't get all his assists at Arsenal. He did have the second most starts, and that's just behind Ramsdale and Gabriel, and the third most minutes, again behind the same players. And he had the second most points behind Odegaard. Odegaard got 212, so he's only 10 points behind Odegaard. So he's ranking really highly consistently through all the stats among Arsenal players. And yeah, people say, "Oh, Arsenal have got Champions League," but a lot of these fixtures will happen on the screen right now before the Champions League even starts. And it's not the fact that the Champions League's only adding in 6 more games. Um, and they're still going to want Saka in the Premier League. They're still going to be trying to get for a Premier League title. He's more likely just to get rested in the cup competitions like FA Cup and League Cup. But at the start of the season, I don't really see why there's a reason to rotate. So he is player number one. Now, player number two is Erling Haaland. Now, bear with me because it's not cheap players, it's players that are good value. And to be honest, I do think, like, whilst he is the most expensive player, what price would you have to have him at to not get him in? Would if he came in at the start of the season priced at 15 or even 16, 17 mil, would you still be getting him in? And I think that's a question, that you should be asking yourselves, in terms of value players, because if he's somebody that you're going to be playing all season and you're going to be captaining him, well, then he's going to be getting double points than anyone else in your team anyway, just through captaining, and that is great value. So he is somebody that I do think at 14 million. Look how many people have him in the teams. That is fantastic value, and for someone that has the fixtures that we've got on screen here, they are really good fixtures as well. And a lot of the times last season, we did think, oh, is he going to get rotated? But he did end up with 33 starts. That is the third most, only behind Edison and Rodri. So, everyone thinks, oh, Haaland rotation risk, or is he going to come off after an hour, or is he going to play the last 30 minutes? He did start more often than not last season, and I think a few of those rests did come around the end of the season when they were going for that treble, and he had a couple of knocks as well. In terms of goals, he obviously was ranked number one in Man City players. Only Foden actually got double figures for Man City with 11 goals. And in terms of assists, he was still ranked fourth behind De Bruyne, Mahrez, and Grealish, who got 18, 11, and 10 assists last season. But a lot of those assists will be for Haaland, so he's still involved in those goals. And, Haaland still managed to get 9 assists even though nobody else really scored. So it's like it looks like a lot of those players are assisting Haaland, and if a Man City goal is scored, Haaland's either getting the goal or an assist. In terms of minutes, he was third again behind Edison and Rodri, but he did have the most points by an absolute mile. He was 89 points ahead of second place, which was De Bruyne. Like I say, he does represent fantastic value for the best team in the league. Next up, we've got Bruno Fernandez. Now, I know there's been a bit of a chat about Bruno Fernandez from a few creators. Really, just talking about his price decrease, I believe he's gone down from about 10 million from last season to 8.5 million. And whilst he didn't have the best season, I do think a lot of that is to do with like Man United's unsettled start. I think Ten Hag coming in, he's now had a full season and a pre-season. And I think they're really underrated, to be honest, to Man United going into this season. I think they could have a running start at the league games, which do look quite reasonable, to be honest. I think Wolves, Forest, and Burnley all at the start of the season in the first 6 games represents fantastic games to be playing. Yeah, you've got Arsenal in and Spurs both away. They're going to be tricky, but they're also going to be tricky for Arsenal and Spurs as well, having to host Man United. In terms of last season's stats, 8 goals and 9 assists doesn't look outstanding, but 8 goals is only second behind Marcus Rashford, and the assists is joint first with Ericsson. I guess you could argue with Mason Mount coming in, where's Bruno going to play? But I do think he is going to be involved in a lot of those attacks and a lot of those goals and assists. So, Man United didn't set the world alight in terms of the number of goals they scored last season, but when they did, Bruno is clearly someone they rely upon for those attacking returns. He did also start 37 games. So even if, there's a certain rotation risk for some players, it doesn't look like Bruno's going to be affected by that. And he did also finish first in minutes by about 500 minutes ahead of the next Man United player, which is a lot of game time that he's getting extra. In terms of points, he was second behind Rashford, but a lot more than third place. He was about 50 points ahead of third place. So if you are looking for a good value Man United asset, obviously you've got Rashford, but I do think Bruno Fernandez is great as well. On to player number 4, and we've gone with Eze here. Now, he did have a great end to the season, and he is only 6.5 million. This is a player that I do think is a potential cheap bargain. He's still only 12.2% owned at time of recording, and his fixtures at the start of the season, whilst a little bit mixed, are pretty good. You've got Sheffield United opening day of the season, you've got Wolves and Fulham in the first 6. That's quite nice, to be honest, especially because 2 of those 3 games are at home. In terms of his stats for last season, a lot of them, like we said, did come towards the end of the season, and that was slightly skewed. These stats and the rankings that he is in Crystal Palace, uh, based on last season, is obviously with Zaha out of the team because he's currently out of contract. But without Zaha, there 10 goals is currently or was double anyone else left in the squad. So no one else scored more than 5 goals for Palace. Eze got 10. In terms of assists, he is second behind Elise. So that's still ranking quite highly among the players that we've still got at Palace. Now, in terms of starts, he was ranked 7th in starts, but he still managed 30 starts, and I think it just shows really, that tells you more about the size of Crystal Palace's squad and how they don't rotate. The fact that he was 7th in number of assists and 8th in terms of minutes, I do think that is as a result that Palace, they don't really rotate the defence. They do have holding midfielders that they don't like to rotate, and they have that solid spine to the team. So I do think in terms of his role moving forward this year, it's going to be increased, especially if Zaha doesn't end up returning. I do think, Eze is someone that could take the leap. And, this time next year, we could be looking at him as an 8 million midfielder. Finally, the last player we've got to look at is Ollie Watkins. Now, he is 8 million, and that is, whilst he is something like, I think he's like the third highest striker in terms of price, there's quite a lot at 8 million and 7.5. You've only got Kane and Haaland above them, but the gap between the 8 millions and Kane is like 4.5 million. So that's quite a big jump. So he does look quite good value compared to the rest of the 8 million strikers. I think you can also rival him with Wilson and Alexander Isak, but then when you're doing that, you're comparing 2 Newcastle strikers who are going to be pretty much fighting for position and minutes against each other. I'm quite surprised that he's only 14.4% owned. I think maybe it's quite difficult to get in all of these players we're mentioning today because they're quite mid-price assets, or quite high-price assets if you're including Haaland in that. But the fixtures for Villa, whilst they start with Newcastle away, aren't that bad, to be honest. Everton, Burnley, and Palace in the first 5 games is pretty good, especially when 3 games are at home. Yeah, they've got Liverpool away as well, but Ollie Watkins finished on 15 goals last season. As we look at the stats, and that was pretty good. That was ranked seventh in the whole Premier League, and he did actually get the most goals, obviously, for Villa as well. No one else actually got more than six goals for Villa, apart from Ollie Watkins, who got 15. In terms of the assists as well, he was joint first with Ramsey, which was pretty good because it also means when he's not scoring, he is setting up the goals. In terms of starts, there was only Conser who got more, and he got 37 starts. So Ollie Watkins is pretty much in there. In terms of minutes, he did finish fourth in terms of minutes, but he is an attacking player, and the only players for Villa that did score record more minutes were the two centre backs and the goalkeeper. In terms of his points as well for the season, he did get the most, and it was by about 33 points, which is quite a lot of points as well. So I know a lot of people are thinking with Villa, are they in Europe? But Unai Emery is somebody that is really good in managing Europe and the league alongside it. And I do also think, a bit like Ten Hag at Man United, Unai Emery has actually had a full pre-season now, and they will be a lot more settled. And Villa looks really good towards the end of the season, and they are a team that I do think could start pretty well before the European fixtures sort of get fully underway. And I think they're a team that people will start jumping on as the season goes on. So thank you very much for listening. First video of the new season. So we are planning on getting out a lot more content over the next few weeks. So if you are new, please do subscribe, especially if you've made it to this stage of the video. You've done pretty well, to be honest, and I do appreciate it. So your support last season was fantastic, and hopefully we can build on it again this season. So I will thank you very much and see you in the next one.